Welcome back. It's still Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're coming to you live from the venue of the 7th Lagos Economic Summit. That is Eco Hotel and Suites. And as we know that the focus for this summit for the last couple of days has been on power. Power drives everything. And the Lagos State government has focused particular attention on transportation, agriculture and housing. But being joined on the program now by the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry of the state, Mrs. Olusola Oworo. Thank you so much, Ms. Oworo, for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Now, in the last couple of days, everything that's been talked about has been focused on power. Now, it's a critical, enabler of development in any sector. But what are the main opportunities for investment in the power sector in Lagos?
Thank you very much. Like you rightly said, power is a main enabler for the economic development of the state and for Nigeria or any economy as a whole. Now, in Lagos State, we have embarked on 3 independent power plants, and we are working on 2 power plants as we speak to facilitate the development of the economy. Now, talking about commerce and industry in particular, now one of the resolutions that have come up in the last 2 days is that the way forward is to have embedded clusters, and that is precisely what Lagos State is doing. We have the Lekki Free Trade Zone, which is a multifaceted economic development along the Lekki axis. So what we're trying to do there is try and ring fence that development. It's a new development entirely, a greenfield development, and what we're trying to do is to ensure that we develop a new town in that area. Now it's going to have light and heavy manufacturing, residential, tourism, and so many different sectors. But the major constraint in this solution is really the issue about power. We have investors who want to invest in the free zone, but the constraint is power. Now, given the current regulations and the state of things as it is, we can only generate power in a limited quantity. So what we're doing in the Lekki Free Zone, for example, is that we're putting in a 12 megawatt plant. Right, and we're doing that in 2 phases. There's a 12 megawatt coming in now. It's actually 24 megawatts. And so the first phase is 12 megawatts, but it's going to be powered by CNG. So this is just a short-term solution because we have key infrastructural projects coming up along the Lekki axis. We have the deep sea port, right? We have a refinery and petrochemical plant coming up, a fertilizer plant coming up as well. We have the proposed international airport. These projects can't be powered by CNG. So in the long term, we need to get natural gas to Lekki to be able to power this project. So one of the key takeaways from this event is how to get natural gas to Lekki to be able to power these key infrastructure development projects. And if we don't focus on this, there's no way we can develop the economy.
Commissioner, let me quickly ask you. We don't have just the Lekki Free Trade Zone. We also have other businesses, clusters, which for no strong effort have actually formed themselves in the local areas like Yaba, Mushin, Lagos Island, particular. Now, they're also having this challenge of electricity supply, and it has actually affected their turnover, and so they don't make as much profits as they make, which is like a debilitating factor for commerce and industry in the state. So before we get to Lekki Free Trade Zone, what is actually going to be done to ensure that commerce doesn't actually record a loss, as we've been seeing in the last couple of sessions, make sure that power actually gets there?
Well, as you would recollect, we've only just unbundled PHCN. Okay, now, so what is happening now is that we're working with the discos to see how we can get power to the end consumers. But as a state, Lagos State, for instance, if you look at our 4 small industrial estates, now we've started with Isolo to provide them with power in Isolo. So from the tenants in Isolo now have 18-hour power compared to when they didn't have anything. So the productivity in Isolo has improved significantly. So what we can do is take small clusters and see how we can provide power to those areas. Now, as a state, we're looking at 3 enterprise zones, especially because of our SMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises. We're looking at 3 enterprise zones, one in Ikorodu, one in Lekki, and another one in Badagry. So when we set up these enterprise zones, we're going to provide them with power. It's going to be metered like we have in Isolo. So we have prepaid meters in Isolo right now. So people pay for power that they need. And for as long as the power is available, they're ready to pay. Now, if you look at pricing of power now, right, when you generate power using diesel, we're paying something between 40 to 70 naira per kilowatt hour, whereas power from the national grid is between 5 and 12 naira per kilowatt hour. So people are actually paying for power that they're generating at astronomical prices.
You here. You know, one of the issues everybody actually has is the fact that I'm paying for something that I cannot see. So now that the Lagos state government has decided to take up this course and ensure that all businesses, whether big, whether small, actually have power to run their businesses, are we going to see a kind of a pricing regime that will favor both parties concerned? That is, all parties concerned: the state government, the private investor, and the end user.
Um, that, in terms of the pricing regime, that really is a question for NERC. But all I can say is that for clusters that we power ourselves, for instance, like in Isolo, right, what we've tried to do is to subsidize the price of the power generated so that the SMEs it's affordable for the SMEs. So that is within our control because it's a small cluster. But when you're talking about the industry or the sector as a whole, I think that we would have to work with the regulatory authorities to come up with a pricing that is acceptable to most people. But the point I'm trying to make is that as of now, the power that we are generating individually is expensive. So the issue about pricing is something that needs to be tackled so that power can be generated to the benefit of everybody. And you know, when we look at the manufacturing sector, it's rather unfortunate that the manufacturing sector is contributing just about 4% to GDP. When you look at the rebased figures, it says 6.8%. This is still extremely low. So when we talk about industrialization, there's no way that we can get to that state because the benchmark for industrialization is about 20 to 30% of GDP, right? Manufacturing sector should contribute about 20 to 30% of GDP. So to get there, we must address this issue about power. And to address that, we must address the gas supply, we must address the infrastructure, and we must address pricing.
Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Oworo, for joining us on the program. But just before I let you go, you keep talking about we have clusters and particular emphasis on Isolo. Is the state government, is your department looking at the fact that there might be a stronger incursion of small companies coming into this particular area, and so we'll have a bigger cluster than probably what you set out to manage? Or do you have a specific number of companies that can stay in particular clusters?
Well, we're looking at a model right now, which is why I said to you that we're working on 3 enterprise zones. And for instance, the one we've started with in Berigwe and Ikorodu is for our block molders and some of our artisans. And there we're hoping that we're looking at setting up some workshops for them there aside from the basic infrastructure. So there are clusters like this that we're looking at in different areas of the state that will make it easier, especially for the SMEs, to be able to set up. So what they will do is to share facilities with other colleagues in the same business so that it will make it easier for them to share their costs and they can improve their efficiency and productivity.
Mrs. Olusola Oworo, thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning. It's been an interesting conversation. Well, as you know, it's still the 7th Lagos Economic Summit, and I've just finished speaking with the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry, Mrs. Olusola Oworo. And, well, it's been quite enlightening, the conversation I've had. And if you want to be part of this, of course, you can just send in your questions or your comments to the relevant department, which in her own case is the ministry, the Department of Commerce and Industry, and of course all the questions that you have will be answered. The session is still ongoing, but what we have right now is a roundup of everything that was actually done in the last 2 days. That is, yesterday and on Tuesday when the summit actually started. And so they're looking at the feedback, the resolutions, and they're reading them out right now. And so we'll go back and listen to what is being said. Of course, the deputy governor, the Lagos State deputy governor, is actually here to get the final document and, of course, present it to the state's governor. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We'll be right back.
Creating a